see you, Aunt.
Okay.
Now I can see you.
Okay. My name is Anthony
Give him a stool.
Stephon Brown. I was born in Far Rockaway, Queens, New York. Came up in a funeral home. My life is kind of like, I'll say Acts 3, where talked about they had a crippled guy. And he was crippled and said that the men led him, and he knew where he wanted to go. He wanted to go to this gate called beauty. And I look at that scripture as of my life, because I was crippled. I was born in a funeral home. We lived upstairs, the funeral home was downstairs, so my life was kind of different coming up. I didn't have friends. I didn't have anybody come to the house and visit me and stuff, so it was unusual. And I remember when I was 5 years old, is when I first got my first taste of alcohol. My sister would give me a cat full, and she would give it to me, and I would drink it. That way I wouldn't be scared. And I would go and I would present the Bible to the people that's standing there and say, from Brown's funeral home, with sympathy, may God bless you and your family. And I would give it to him, and I would stand back to the coffin next to my sister. Me, my sister, and my half-brother ran the funeral home. My mother, she was the director of all 5 rural hospitals of dietary departments. My dad, he drove the Long Island Railroad, so he was hardly ever home. So my sister was my mother. She took care of me. She helped me with my homework. She came to the school. I've never had kids come to my house. I always got teased. They used to call me a bomb boy and stuff like that. And I lived across the street from Edgemere Projects. And Edgemere Projects, every weekend, they would have a block party. And I would look out my window. I would just look at the block party. Now, my room was like Toys R Us. I had every kind of toy you can think of. Matchbox cars, Army Men, everything in there, because I played by myself. And now I understand how, just when you're young, how things affect you when you grow up, because I've learned how to entertain myself. Still this day, I don't know how to come about and to make friends and to try to fit in and to play games. I need someone to encourage me and say, oh, go ahead, man, it's going to be okay. So I started drinking real bad then. I got a little older and I started sneaking into the bar and drinking. And my dad was Muslim. So I say my family was kind of dysfunctional. My mom was a Christian, my dad was Muslim, and I know what you're thinking, how did that work? But it worked fine because my mom's, she was love. And my dad never interfered with anything my mom's had to say. I kind of learned it real easy. When I asked my dad, he'd send me to my mom. So I started to understand that, there's no need of me asking my dad. I'll just go to mom's. And I would just ask my mother about things. But my dad was prejudiced. He was real prejudiced. So I kind of had hate at this time in my heart for my dad. I didn't like him. And he would make me go with him when I got older to go paint, because he would paint when he's not driving the trains. And he wanted me to cut, and I didn't know what cutting was. And he would put a paintbrush in my hand, and he'd say, I want you to cut that line down on the ground. And I would take some tissue and stuff put there, and he would snatch the tissue from me, and he wouldn't put nothing down there. And every time I get it on the floor, he would get mad at me, and he would wipe it up, and he would tell me to do it again. Well, after a couple months, I got real good at it, to where I didn't have to put nothing down, man. I could just edge real good. I got good in painting. So I was pretty good in painting and good in talking with people, because at the funeral home, there was only one thing. You really ain't got to talk. You just listen, and that's what we was taught, to don't say nothing. And I just listened. So I see what God has done. God has made me a caretaker. I was a caretaker when I was coming up, and now it's like God still uses me. No matter where I'm at, people come to me and they speak to me and they share with me, and I just listen. Because I think that's the most important thing today, is just listening sometime and not saying a word, And I started drinking real bad. Real bad I started drinking, and I tried to fit in. So what I would do is, my mother, money wasn't a problem. I always had money, so I would buy quartz and stuff and go over to Edgemere Projects, and I would buy things. And what I mean by buying things is that I would just get a case of beer, whatever I see them drinking, and I would just give out beer. And after a while, they started liking me every week when they know they called me unique in Edgemere Projects. That's what they called me, unique. And that's my dad gave me that name. My mom's named me Anthony, my sister named me Stephon, and my dad wanted to name me Unique, but my mother refused to let that go on my birth certificate. So that never came on my birth certificate. So everybody in the neighborhood would call me Unique. And friends, I brought friends, but I never really had a friend. I had one friend, his name was Danny. He was a white guy. I lived in a white neighborhood. So it wasn't no blacks on my street. We had a house and all white people was all over the next houses and everything. And one day, I went to school and I came home and the fire trucks was all out there and they burned down the funeral home, but not all the way down. So my dad had got the Nation of Islam to come rebuild it. Now, Elijah Muhammad was a bad man at that time. That's who my dad was up under. If you don't know, this was back in the 80s, because I was born in 64. So this was back in the 80s, and it was real bad at that time, you know. And my best friend Danny was white, and the only way I was able to talk to Danny is I told my dad got me some walkie-talkies, and that's how I did my homework. I would call him on the walkie-talkie. My name was the Pony Express. And I would call him on the walkie-talkie, and we would do our homework over the walkie-talkie. And in class, when we go to school, all the blacks would sit on one side, and all the whites would sit on the side, and I never forget, I had a teacher named Mr. Stern. And he would say, I'm going to walk out this class, and when I come back in, I want to see some color in here. And when he walk out that class and he come back, everybody would mix up, and we'd sit next, white, black, and we'd sit next to each other. And it was this girl named Thomasina. She would always sit next to me. And I wasn't a good speller, and Thomasina would just come, and she never judged me. She would just come, and she would sit down next to me, and she would help me with spelling and stuff, you know. And I remember one night, I got mad at my dad. I was really upset with him because he wanted me to go painting with him, and I didn't want to go painting, and he made me go. So that day after school, I said, I'm going to make my dad mad. I'm going to bring Thomasina to the house. And Daddy said, I would do that. You know your dad, I wouldn't take her to the house. I said, nah, I'm taking her to the house. And I brought her to the house because I knew that was going to piss my dad off. And I didn't care. I brought her to the house and my dad had this look on his face. He was a black man. He was really dark skinned. He turned white that day. He got real black. He was and so my mom, she had love, man. One thing about my mother, I've learned how to pray. My first prayer was, now I lay you down to sleep. Pray the Lord my soul to keep it while she died. You know how it goes. And that was my first prayer. And still this day I say it sometimes. You know, it reminds me of my mom's. And Thomasina ended up getting a job there at the funeral home, making arrangements, flower arrangements. And when they rebuilt the house, two neighbors moved from our house. So my dad brought the two houses next to us after they built the funeral home. So he said he didn't want no one living next to us. And the funeral home now was the funeral home, and we had the longest house on the block to where we had like a tunnel that you can walk through and come straight to the funeral home in case it's raining. It was like a bridge or whatever. And I learned how to wash cars. I started detailing the limos and the hearses and stuff, you know, until I got over the drive and everything, you know. And my half-brother, we was real close. My little brother wasn't born then, so it was just me and my sister, my half-brother. And he was married. And he had this dog named Spliffy, and my little niece named Shauna. She was probably about the size of that young lady there sitting in the chair. And I never forget, every holidays we would switch up where we're going to have Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving was be at my half-brother's house. And this is what was told to me by my mother, that the baby was playing with the ball. And Spliffy, if you throw that ball, he'll go get the ball and he'll bring it back to you. Well, the house had like a sliding glass door in it. They had a swimming pool, but the swimming pool didn't have the fences like they got now. They had the fences. Have you ever seen the wooden things you used to hang your clothes up on? It was made out of wood, and it had the little slots, and you hang your clothes up on them. This was way back, you know. Well, that's how the fences was back then. It was made out of that wood. You could just take it and you can push it in like that, or you can pull it out. And the ball went in the pool, and she went to lift over, and she fell into the pool. And she drowned, and she died. This was the first time that I experienced a family member at the funeral home. And now this had really touched me because I'm used to other people being on that table
people that pissed me off, made me mad, and I got the last word all the time, talking to them, and and here is my niece laying there on the table, and I didn't want to have a part of the funeral home anymore. I didn't like it anymore. I've never really understood it, how you get paid and you're making money off of something like that there, and I felt like I was forced into it. So then I started getting resentment of my family then, because I felt I was forced to do this here type of job. I could never get a summer job because of the money that my parents made. So I couldn't get a summer job. So what I would do is, I would continue going to Edgemere projects and stuff and just paying my way to buy friends. Well, an event came up one day to where I don't know what they have here. I know I just went to this place where we just had a convention and whatnot out in the woods, But before I go there, the way I got closer down here to Florida was my drinking. I became an alcoholic at an early age. I got to where I couldn't function without it. I had to have it every day. I had a cup to where I would carry with me all the time in New York. And in New York, you can drink, walk in the streets, as long as you got it in a brown paper bag, it was okay, And Thomasina never complained about my drinking, never complained. She just prayed about everything. She prayed before we drove somewhere, prayed before we eat, prayed before, and I would tease her all the time about that, about praying. Before we go anywhere, I would say, what we got to do, pray, and I would tease her. But she introduced me to Christ. Me going to church with her, her mom used to teach Bible study, and I've always heard about God, through the funerals. I heard about this God, but I never knew who this Jesus was. I thought Jesus was Jesus and God was God. That's the way I thought it was coming up. And she would try to explain it to me. And today I kind of feel like she was an angel, in my life, because it was such a short time. We ended up having 2 kids, named Zan, and my son name is Thaddeus. And Thaddeus stay in New York. He's 36 right now. My daughter's 33. She's at Bethune-Cookman College. Me and her has a great relationship. And it was this event in Atlanta, Georgia, called Army's Crush. And I asked my mother if I can go, and my mother said, Stephon, I don't think you should go. And I said, well, why, Mom? She said, well, I got a feeling. I said, well, what feeling you got? She said, you know you're going to drink. I said, Mom, I promise you're not going to drink. She said, Stephon, you're going to drink. And I got a feeling you shouldn't go. I said, well, Mom, I promise you, I won't drink until I get there. And my mother, when she don't believe you, she'll just say, and that's what she told me. Well, that Friday morning, I go pick my friends up, pick Thomasina up, Danny up, and Danny's girlfriend wanted to go. Her name was Blue. We called her Blue because she had these beautiful blue eyes, and we would call her Blue. And Thomasina and Blue didn't do anything. They didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't do anything. Just me and Danny would drink. And Danny did a lot more than what I did, but he was my best friend. I knew Danny loved me, and I've never met nobody else like Danny till this day. He'd go to the store, and if he go to the store, he's going to come back and bring me something. And that's just how he was, and I loved him for that, and I would do the same thing. When we get to Atlanta, Georgia, and we're partying, and the girls go up to the hotel, and they're staying up at the hotel, and me and Daddy leave the hotel. We go downstairs, and we're partying by the swimming pool, having a good time, steady drinking. Saturday, doing the same thing. I didn't get any sleep. Doing the same thing, partying with Danny. Not one time Thomasina said anything. Never said a word to me. Sunday come. It's time to go now. Time to go home. Time to go back to New York. And I just had brought a Trans Am, like Smokey and the Bandit, if you ever seen that movie. I love the way, I like fast cars. I like the way it sounded. And I got it from this guy at the Ford place. And I'm at a red light. And this yellow Trans Am pulls up, he's rubbing his engine. And I knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to race. And I never forget, Thomasina put her hand on my leg like this. She gave me that look. I know every man in this place right here know what that look means when your wife gives you that look. She ain't got to say a word. We know what that means. And that means, no, let him go. Get to the second light, you do the same thing as one of his angels. And I didn't look over there at it this time, because I've learned now what a relapse is. You think about it before you absolutely do it, you know. And that's what I did. I thought about it at that second light. My mind was made up. I said, if he stopped at this third light, I'm going to hit him. So we pull off. He stopped at the third light. And today, I wish that he didn't stop at the third light. Today, I wish I didn't go. I wish I'd listened to my moms and didn't go. But I did go. And when the light turned green, to this day, I don't know why, I was looking in the rear view mirror. And I punched that thing, and that bad boy stood up, and all I see him is fading away until I couldn't see him no more. And I looked down at the road, and just when I looked down at the road, the car was going into a sharp curve, and I snatched the wheel, and it just had got finished raining, and the car went into a spin, and it like hit this bank, and when it hit that bank, it just started flipping. I remember the T-tops flying out, and it just kept flipping, and then it was like a big explosion, like boom, and we're upside down, and the engine is still running. And I remember these two white men come, and they come and they pull me out the car. And one of them says, sit down, man, you got a hole in your head, man, sit down. But I'm not feeling any pain, because I've been up for 3 days. And I sit down, but I'm looking for Thomasina. I see Danny and Blue. They're like hanging upside down, but they're not moving. And it never came to my mind that they was dead, you know. But I don't see Thomasina. And I heard one of the men say, around here. And we go around to the passenger side, and the car is on her from here down. Sorry about that. And I get down on my knees, and I grab her hand, and I'm talking with her, and we're trying to get the car off her hand. And I'm screaming and saying, get the car off her. And it, like it took forever for the EMS to get there. And finally, when they got there, they took the car off her, and she was split in half. And I just lost it. I really lost it. They put me in the hospital, and they sedated me. And still, I didn't know that Danny Blue was dead. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 to 3 weeks. And finally they came in there and they let me know, and I'm asking still, where's Thomasina? And they finally tell me that she was dead. And I said, no, she was talking to me. She's not dead. She was talking to me.